Hi, Craig.
Hey, Molife, hi.
How are you?
I'm very good, man. You look at your background, fantastic.
Good, good. No, yours looks stunning. I mean, we have 7 attendees here. Actually, Sia Kolisi is here as an attendee, so I'm just promoting him to a panelist. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone is here and everyone can hear us. Thank you guys for joining us. Just waiting for more people to join us so we can start our mental health webinar. Thank you for coming through. Mahlatse, Mpumi.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you guys doing?
One is nervous and really hungry.
You look very cool, calm, and collected, Mahlatse.
Oh, thank you very much, Craig. That's nice of you.
Cool. Sia, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, and you?
Good, thank you. Good. We're just waiting on Nkamo to join us, then we can start the webinar. And to our attendees, thank you so much for joining us. I am Molife, Kumona. I am the editor-in-chief for GQ Magazine South Africa, and welcome to the GQ Mental Health Webinar. We're just waiting on our psychologist, our clinical psychologist, to join us so we can start our webinar. So also we're waiting for more people to join. But thank you so much for making time. Guys, Craig, I love your jersey. Is that Makosa jersey? How dope.
Me.
No, Mpumi, sorry, Mpumi.
Yeah, the whole costume.
I had to. I mean, like there was like the whole production thing going on before him. You know? Craig had like a GQ thing there. You had your thing. So Mahlatse and Sia is wearing a branded shirt. Like it was just becoming very unfair, you know?
You upped the game a bit there, Mpumi.
Pardon?
You upped the game a little bit there.
I had to call Laduma and say, chap, you better do something here, you know?
Yes.
I don't have the Dove t-shirt, you know?
So for everyone who's just joining us, we're just waiting for our clinical psychologist, Nkamo, to join us. He was with us in our briefing session. So Nkamo will be with us in the next few minutes. He was with us in our session. So just give us maybe a minute or two, then we're going to start our webinar. And once again, thank you so much for joining us for our webinar, the GQ Mental Health Webinar. If you're tweeting on social media, if you're on any social media platform, the hashtag is hashtag GQ Mental Health. Definitely an important conversation to have. Let me just check on our psychologist, actually.
Hope he's come all right with his sound.
There he goes. Nkamo, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We literally, we were waiting on you to join us for the webinar. So so I think we should get right into it. So to everyone joining, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Molife Kumona. I'm the editor-in-chief for GQ Magazine South Africa. And today we are having a conversation that is extremely important to have, a conversation about mental health, which is brought to you by Dove Men Plus Care, as well as in conjunction with I Love You Men. And I'm not coming alone in terms of the panel. I'm here with some esteemed guests. We've got Craig Wilkinson, who is the founder of Father of the Nation, Mpumi, who is the founder of I Love You Man and also a film director and a creative strategist, Sia Kolisi, who you know as the Springbok captain, as well as an author and a philanthropist. We've got Oscar Nkamo, as I like to call him, who is a clinical psychologist. Then Mahlatse James, who is a talent and artist manager. So you may ask, why are we here? Pretty much, why are we doing this webinar? Reason for that is for us to just remove the stigma behind men opening up about how they feel and dealing with mental health. And what I wanted to do, literally for probably 2 seconds, just take a moment of silence for all those men who've gone on before us and based on mental health, who have lost their lives, whether suicide and other ways. So let's just take a moment of silence, literally a moment of silence for those guys. Thank you, thank you. So I'll start with you, Nkamo. Can you just take us through what mental health is? Why I ask that is because in a lot of my conversations, right, in the past couple of weeks and months, it seems men, no matter how high up the ladder you are, or if you're just an everyday guy who is working a regular job, most guys don't get what mental health is. And you as a clinical psychologist, can you just take us through what mental health is?
Yeah, thank you so much. Before maybe I go to define what mental health is, maybe I should ask a question. Is any one of you, maybe in the panel, who is in therapy or has been in therapy? And what is your experience in therapy?
Yeah, I have. It's over probably 15 years of it.
Yeah. You not disclose the reason for therapy, but
no. I mean, I don't actually mind. I'm fully open about it. Yeah, I mean, it's centered around major depression, you know, and it was quite a lot of years and years of not being aware of it and living with it, and it became a comfort in my system, you know. It's so crazy that you become it, and you find ways to deal with it, and actually don't want to get out of it because it has become so much of your comfort.
Yes.
You know, and psychologically and mentally, the dark cloud becomes your comfort. You know, it becomes much easier to navigate life when you're going through that and being under depression. So for me, I mean, the main trigger to get out of it was my daughter and my son, basically, you know. And looking at them, it triggered that I needed to do something. I needed to be the person that I wanted to be, because I was in that depression, I think, for 4 or 5 years. Lost a lot of businesses, lost, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, you're constantly trying to build yourself, you know. And I just lost quite a lot of businesses. And as a creative, I was just suffocating at agencies where I was working and providing strategy. And then it just became normal, you know. I just could live with it. And I mean, the trigger actually to come out of it, we're in Cape Town with my son. And I mean, I remember I couldn't afford ice cream that he wanted, you know, and I couldn't be able to tell him why I can't afford ice cream, you know. And I just started getting so aggressive towards him, like verbally. And as we're driving, I just cried. I mean, tears started pouring and pouring and pouring. And at that moment, I was like, flip, I need to change, you know. And then therapy became an introduction to my life. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing such sensitive information. And just to define what mental health is actually psychological health. So when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about one's psychological health. So it encompasses all mental dimensions: your cognitive, your emotional, your behavioral, and believe me, your belief system. A lot of us, we leave the belief system out of defining mental health. We think mental health is just, you know, how you feel, how you react, and how you behave, and we forget the belief system, which is quite important. So when we talk about mental health, when we say the cognitive, we're talking about how a person thinks. you know, and the emotional will then be how a person feels. You know, the behavioral component of mental health will then be, you know, how they act, how they behave, you know, and also the social, which is how they interact with the environment, and the belief system, what they believe in. So all of these dimensions, they form part of what mental health is.
Okay. And if you're looking at the common mental health challenges or illnesses that men have, because I think it's very important that as men on this call, what are those common ones that you've seen in your work, and obviously we're not getting as much help as we need to. What are those common ones?
Sure. The first one will be suicide attempts.
Mm.
You know? And when we talk about suicide, we then link it to depression. We then talk about bipolar. You know, this is a mood disorder where there is fluctuation in how you feel. 1 minute you're feeling happy, the other minute you're feeling sad. And this sadness you cannot explain, you know. And there's anxiety and PTSD. So PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. This is when you're exposed to a trauma, you know, that later on, psychologically, you start reacting, you know, to stimulus or to anything that reminds you of the trauma. And then we have substance abuse. Yeah, this is something that maybe I should park here and really break down what I mean by substance abuse. There's substance use and there's substance abuse. So we need to differentiate the two. So substance use is when you use substance, right?
Yes.
Substance abuse is when now you overuse substance to a point where it affects your functioning. Occupationally, right? Interactionally, socially. So when now your drinking or your substance use becomes a problem in your life, right? This is one of the common, and I think maybe we should come to this later on in the physical. I need to break down this, you know, and this is one of the coping mechanisms that a lot of people use. Men, particularly, they use substance to cope, you know. And then we have psychotic disorders or schizophrenia, you know. This is when now a person is cognitively, they start, because of substance that they use, the wiring becomes in the head becomes a bit affected. And now they start seeing things, they start feeling things other people cannot feel. So those are the common mental health illnesses that men present with. There are many, but these are the common ones. But the main one is depression, you know.
And Sia, over to you. I think as a sportsman, when did you realize that mental health was something that is important to you? As someone who is your sportsman, you are celebrated all over, and I'm sure that comes with a lot of pressure as well. When did that mental health journey start for you? I think you're muted, Sia.
Me now.
Yeah, now.
Yeah, I think I realized it after, like, as I started going into when the older I was getting in my sport, the more I started realizing that, you know what, I can't take all the pressure. First of all, pressure from myself because I've got high expectations of myself. Then I have to perform for the team because I'm getting paid to do what I do. Then there's the fans that I need to also please in the way that I play, the way that they want me to see me play. Obviously, your teammates as well, and then also your family, that you have to be there for the family. So I never thought I had anything wrong with me. To be honest, where I grew up, we, like my friends, as with the Lokshini, we all went through the similar things, and we didn't know there was nothing wrong with us. There was something wrong with us at the time, you know, because of the stuff that we were exposed to, the stuff that we saw. Like for me, I think I was 8 or 9 years old, having my grandmother passed away in my arms while I was looking after her, and nobody came to check on me. How was I doing? I didn't know that something was wrong with me. Seeing my mom being abused in the street, you know, and then I moved on with my life, and I started becoming numb to stuff, where I started just if I see something happen in the street, oh, this is normal, you know, like, you know, when I see a lady being beaten by a man, you've seen it so many times that you just keep on moving, you know, until now that I'm able to afford to go see someone. I'm able to pay and go see someone. And then I saw the lady and she was like, yo, like when I told everything I told, she's like, yo, like that's a lot of trauma for such a young man. I'm like, what are you talking about? What's even trauma? You know? And I'm like, you know how much money you'll make out if you come to my community and listen to people, you know? She just listened to me and I told her. Then I had to, after Singish, and then I started talking more, started expressing myself, you know, and she encouraged me to speak a little bit more, especially with other men. Then I got with Mahlatse, who I talked to, who's also another a black man that I sit down and talk, because we as black men are exposed to different things to other men. You know, it's hard for me to go express myself and tell someone that is not black, because what I'm exposed to, you know, they might freak out, where black men will understand exactly what I'm talking about. So I started to try and find a circle of men that I could speak to, you know, and also I go see someone, and it makes me happy to go see someone, because why? Because when I was young, I was told, indoda ikhad, indoda mourns in silence, you know, those things we grew up with. We were taught that you can't cry, you must hold it together. It's like at school when they punish you, you know, we don't get detention. You get, they hit you on the hand. We as boys, we had to keep it together and try and be strong. But inside, I was like, this is flippant soul, you know, I want to cry, you know. And I'd never seen my dad cry, I don't, until recently, you know. Yeah. So I see someone, now I know my trigger points, you know.
Yeah.
When I'm talking to someone and I'm feeling that I'm getting upset, I have to walk away. Alcohol was my way out, and that's the only way me and my friends, when I was young already, Lokshini, that's how we opened up after drinking, after a while. Then you sit there, you start crying. Those are the only time we were able to express ourselves.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, speaking of nobody coming to check on you, I think, Craig, you are a person who you run Father of the Nation, and you're really at the core of what you do is looking at men and finding a way to engage with them. Can you tell us about that and where we are in terms of mental health? I think our state and what Sia said, that no one would check, are you okay? Are you all right? Do you have any trauma?
Look, I think we're living in a very wounded nation, aren't we? We have a very tough and in many ways abusive past. And you know what Sia says is so true. So many men are living with post-traumatic stress disorder without even knowing it. And particularly men, there's a huge amount of pressure on men to be the man, whatever that means, you know, to be tough, to be strong, and we grow up, and I mean, this is pretty universal. We grew up with the concept of big boys don't cry, you know, big boys don't show vulnerability, and almost no one was perfectly fathered, perfectly mothered, perfectly raised. So every man arrives at adulthood with some form of wound. You know, some are much more extreme than others, but there's a woundedness in a man, and the woundedness is generally around the ability to be in touch with one's emotions and the permission to share those emotions. And the woundedness is also around, am I enough? Do I have what it takes? You know, Sia was talking about the pressure, you know, to perform as a family man, to perform as I mean, he's a shining beacon in his community. You know, that's pressure to perform. You go into a team, you have to perform. You know, all your mates are looking to you, all your teammates, the coaches are looking at you. And South Africa has tremendous amount of woundedness and a tremendous amount of fatherlessness. You know, young boys look to older men to model to them what it means to be a man. But many South Africans, in fact, I would say the majority grew up without that. So there isn't an older man to teach them what it means to be a man, to validate them as boys. So they arrive at adulthood thinking, I am the man. I don't have to play the man. I don't have to put up a front or whatever. I am the man, and who I am is enough. You know, however tall I am, strong I am, fast enough, bright I am, I'm enough. You know, I am the man. I don't have to play the man. So we run programs throughout South Africa. I mean, one of our leading ones is in Alexander Township, just outside Joburg, where we have a no excuse for abuse center. And one of the things we do is we engage men in conversation. So we have small groups of men, 10 or 15, a facilitated conversation, and it's a platform where they can be open and honest and vulnerable. And for the first time in their lives, for most of these guys, they're actually sharing vulnerabilities without, as Sia says, being drunk, you know, without the courage of a beer. And you find men having permission to be vulnerable is incredibly healing. But secondly, what we do is we teach them what it means to be a man. You know, the misconceptions about masculinity are huge. Big boys don't cry. The more women that you can bed, the more of a man you are. The more power you have, the more of a man you are. You have to have money to be a man. I mean, all these are lies about masculinity. True masculinity is not how much strength you have, it's what do you do with your strength, you know? It's not how much money you have, it's what do you do with whatever you have. You know, I love what someone said. They said the poorest man can leave behind the richest legacy, because it's not what you leave for somebody, it's what you leave in somebody. You know, so once we start discussing these concepts about masculinity, which is not what, you know, the narrative we get from the media, woman power, sex, money, big boys don't cry. Men just come alive and they say, wow, I thought to be a man, I had to be that. Suddenly I can be vulnerable. And, you know, let's be honest, it takes a lot more courage to be vulnerable than it does to be to hide your feelings. You know, if Sia comes to me and says, Craig, how are you doing, brother? And hey, man, I'm strong. You know, meanwhile, I'm not. It's much easier for me to say, see, I'm great, than to say, you know, I'm really, really struggling. And that's why we see 4 times more men commit suicide than women. 4 times more, because we hold it, we carry it, we don't, you know, and then we escape into beer, to wine, to sex, to excessive anything, you know. So it's so crucial that number one, we realize that true masculinity is a beautiful, powerful, wonderful gift to humanity. We have to. Men are not trash, you know. Some men behave in a trashy manner, but innately masculinity is a beautiful gift to humanity because it loves and it serves and it protects and it provides. But then wounded masculinity can be very destructive. Let me stop there.
And I think, like, I love the fact that you said wounded masculinity can be very destructive. And I think that's something that I think we don't discuss enough. And wounded masculinity then breeds all the traumas. Mahlatse, can we talk about your own personal mental health journey? And you also are an artist manager. So I'm sure, and from what we know, from what we've seen in terms of research, artists also suffer a lot from mental health issues. So what's your mental health journey and how do you go through it? And how do you also work with your artists to perhaps assist them?
Yep. Well, my own personal mental health journey has been breeding for quite some time. I mean, one started taking care of oneself mentally quite a while ago. And then, of course, in the wake of the 2020 lockdown here in South Africa, which kind of prompted all of us to have a bit of time to engage a little bit in being introspective, sort of looking inward and confronting certain ideas about who we think we are and who we should be. I too found myself in that space, despite my role being that of a person whose duty is to manage and take care of great careers and work alongside some of the greatest artists of our time. I am very fortunate, and this speaks to my privilege, that I have been afforded space by my employer, who is empathic to my own mental health. And of course, I tend to extend that to the artists with whom I work. And I also share space with a partner who is also open to understanding what my mental health journey is. As the panel could possibly imagine, that it's very, very important for one to have a solid ground. Otherwise, I cannot render if my very own well is running dry. So thankfully, I have curated, if one can say, spaces I navigate that are very, very safe. I try to work my utmost hard to try and eradicate the concept of performative masculinity. And speaking to Craig's point about vulnerability being a very important key point and a pillar to how one approaches life going forward, I find it very, very important. I cannot stress that enough, that at the space where one is vulnerable, I can vouch for that. I can say that I found that it is much more safer, and you do build a community around that. So to answer your question, Molife, in my very long-winded way, I am working towards a very healthy mental space of my own, and I'm very, very interested in holding space for the artists with whom I work. So that is very, very important to me.
And thank you so much for that, Mahlatse. Mpumi, you started I Love You Man, an organization where men speak openly about different things. In fact, that's how you and I got to know each other. Let's talk about why you created that platform and how such platforms, such as these as well, are important for mental health. You shared a little bit about your own personal mental health journey, and thank you for that. So let's just talk about that. I Love You Man and mental health, and why platforms like that and this webinar are also very important for us.
Thanks. Yeah, it's exactly my life's journey that led me to that. You know, I think Sia touched on, Craig touched on, and Mahlatse, you know, and Oscar. I mean, for me, where I grew up in Soweto, so it was just normal for men to be vicious, to be brutal, to be hardcore. That's the only way. That's how you could claim your manness and your masculinity. You know, like how Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. It was like that kind of a thing. You step up, you know, you become a man and you show how strong you are, you know. And when I was going through my struggles with mental health, and it was crazy because I was at a space where creatively I was doing also well, but I didn't understand why I'm not good internally. I'm not good. I'm not okay, you know. And I sat with so many friends and I could not be able to share the pain that I'm going through, or even if I tried to share the pain that I'm going through, it would just be like, don't worry, man, you know, let's have a drink. Hey, you'll be okay, you know, you'll be fine. So from there onwards, I started feeling that we needed a platform where I could hear other men talk about their pain, you know. The more I started engaging with different men that will open up about what they're going through, their pain. That's where that's what also triggered me to do something about my depression. It was hearing more and more men talking about things that I thought were okay, were common. You know, it was okay for me to be angry. It's okay for me to feel the way I'm feeling. It's okay for me to sit and watch TV the whole day. You know what I mean? The basic commonalities that I thought were okay, when I started hearing more men saying, nah, it's not okay actually to go through that. And then I thought it was very important to create a platform. And that's where I Love You Man started, you know, that, okay, we need to create a podcast. We need to hear more and more men talk about the pains that they are going through. They need to open up. And it's so different, you know, because sometimes we always think when you've got money, you're okay. Sometimes you're not, you know, like Sia was saying, he was performing at the highest level, but internally was not okay. You know, I was senior at so many agencies, but internally I was bleeding, you know. And the more I started hanging out with brothers that were sharing about their pain, the more I started realizing we needed to create more and more spaces. So I Love You Man became the tool for that. So we create podcasts centered around just men talking, like just creating spaces where men, friends, brothers can talk. And also it's to break the cycle, you know, that I grew up in and Sia grew up in. The idea, and I'm sure so many of us, that young boys can be able to hear Sia talking about his pain, can be able to hear Mahlatse, you, Craig, you know, we need, the more you hear this, the better, you know. And I mean, and also just to see more images of positive Black men, it inspires, you know, because we grew up in a space where those images were never there. You know, it was constantly violent images that you would see, you know. So that's that. And I mean, I Love You Man, it's part of the Other Fathers, which is a creative agency that like only focuses on content centered around men and boys. You know, we engage with brands on how we can create better strategies, better posters, banners, like everything, because it's so easy. The negative you see, it's the negative you start living with, and the negative you then start practicing, you know.
Absolutely.
So the podcast is that, yeah.
Yeah, you and I can talk forever, Mpumi. We've spoken for a long time before. For everyone who's joining, thank you so much for joining us. We've got hampers that are available from Dove that we're giving away. So all you need to do is engage with us. You can ask questions. You can raise your hand, or you can put your questions there in the chat, and then we'll chat more. But one thing I wanted to find out from all of us would be, how do you know that your mental health is not in check? I'll start with you, Craig. How do you know that you're off balance? So I'll give you an example of myself. For me, when I start being snappy, I realize that something is off key. When I start just being snappy, I realize that something is off key. Then in some cases, I go back to myself and find out what it is. And then in some cases, usually it's people who pick it up, go like, you're being snappy. For you, Craig, how is it? So, because I want to find out from Craig and literally all the guys on this platform, how do you realize that your mental health is not in check? And what do you do? What's that thing that you do in order to get yourself back there? Craig?
I think you're 100% right. A short fuse is a very good sign, losing your temper very quickly. I think another sign is, do you have any addictions? And by that, I don't mean that you're spiking up with heroin. I mean, the addiction can be eating. It can be too much sport. It can be watching pornography. It can be, any kind of, drinking a little bit too much. I think when men, the opposite of masculinity is not femininity. The opposite of masculinity is passivity. So when we're not standing up and being everything that we were designed to be, and we're withdrawing into addictions, eating, drinking, whatever the case, too much, we're running away, and we're using anesthetics, to ease the pain. I think that's a key issue. And for me, the other one is, how do the people around me, how do I make them feel? You can judge the character of a man by looking at the happiness of his partner. How is he or she? How are they blossoming? Are they better people because you're in their lives, or are they haggard and taking strain? I mean, that's a sign, because men are designed to make the world a better place. We're designed to make everyone around us better people because we're in their lives, And if your teammates, your wife, your kids, your partner, whoever it might be, is less a person because you're in their life, something is not right. So addictions coming off the handle and looking at the people around you. And one of the things we have to do as men is look in the mirror. And I think men are not good at doing that. Look in the mirror, get feedback. How am I doing as a husband, as a father, as a brother, as a friend, as a son, as a teammate? How am I to get feedback from our loved ones and take that feedback seriously, and then take stock and make adjustments.
And for you, Sia, how do you know that you're off key? How do you know that something is off key? I need to step away. How do you know that?
I think also for me, I get irritable and I get snappy as well. And then I know that I need to kind of walk away and cool off, and also when I start becoming defensive as well, and I'm not thinking before I speak, I'm speaking straight away. That's when I know. And then also I'm a happy person. I'm a happy character. I want to bring the vibe. I want to make everybody happy in the changing room. I make jokes. I make fun of myself. But when I'm down and I don't want to talk, then I know now I'm hitting rock bottom. That's when I start calling friends around me. My wife always picks it up. She's the person that I always open up to as much as I can. But I've got friends as well, male friends that I talk to, a group of men. There's obviously some of the guys that I'm in the church community with. And I tell them, just to pray for me, and I tell them what's going on. And then I've got other men that that I talk to as well about what I'm doing.
Cool. And Mahlatse, for you?
Well, mine manifests a tad bit differently, in a sense that I tend to ingest quite a lot of my trauma and my experiences, and the way it manifests is in physicality. My body would literally start falling apart. I would get ill every other day. It would show in my skin, and just the way I move around the world as well. One would probably identify by seeing that this is not an okay person by way of how they physically put together. And thankfully, once again, I do have a partner who tends to mirror that against my behaviors whenever there's a change. So he spotted quite earlier on and would ask me and engage much further. So I would develop peptic ulcers or absolute exhaustion, and I am working through it. The aim is not to get over it, is to really come up with systems to work through it.
Absolutely. And Nkamo, as someone who's as a clinical psychologist, right? And from what you find, why do men not want to talk? Why do men not want to talk? From your findings, why? What is that? What's the reason?
I think just before I answer that question, I just want to go back to what the panel shared. For me, what came to mind is self-awareness. Just to add on the last question that you asked, self-awareness is very important. I term it as checking in with yourself, having the ability to check in with you, spending time with you to say, I'm not feeling well today. What is up? What's going on? What triggered me? And this speaks volume to self-awareness, being aware of your emotional state or changes. But going to back to your second question, I think a lot of men don't speak up because of what culture has taught us. Culture has taught us that we need to man up, that if you show your emotions, you are weak, that a man should be a man, and this affects how we then seek help. This affects how we then, look at ourselves to say that I'm a man. If I then speak up about my emotions, whatever that I'm going through, I might be labeled as weak, I remember what Sia said earlier on, and he mentioned that when he was growing up, he was told that, boys don't cry. And these are constructs or things that we keep on saying to our young men, to our boys, that men don't cry. And this affects them later on when they have to seek help,
Absolutely. So another thing, right? How do we get to a point where we are able to, okay, so I am in my 20s. Let's say I'm not in my 20s. I'm just giving an example. I'm in my 20s. My life is not going the direction I would want it to go. First of all, how do I know that my mental health is not in the right space? 1, 2, how do I then communicate it? And what do I do? So I think this can be a question for everyone. Let me start with you, maybe Mpumi. Then we can go to Craig, then Nkamo. So let's start with you, Mpumi. I'm in my 20s. The unemployment rate is at 35.5. Things are not going great. I have a girlfriend. I have a boyfriend. How do I know that, hey, listen, something is not okay with my mental health? What are some of those things?
Yeah, it's a very tricky one, Molife, to be honest, because like literally we in that societal pressure a lot, and more especially in townships, the new venue where the Molifes that are working really well come from the suburbs with the expensive cars and, come to the townships, and these boys feel the pain of being unemployed and are seeing these men that are well off, that are constantly showing them that life is on another level on the outer side. It's very hard because also it's so easy to live with it and it becomes common, but once you start feeling sad in yourself, I think all of us can agree, it's very rare that you can be going through mental health problems and you're happy in yourself. I think once you start feeling sad in yourself, then something is definitely wrong, because then it's no longer about the finance you have. It's no longer about once you start constantly feeling sad, that's when you know that something is definitely off, yeah, and that's what I think.
Yes, yeah. I see your
so,
hand here.
So I don't want to wait and forget my train of thought. So I've got a question upon this because I'm thinking to myself now, I'm working, right? I'm working, I've got resources and I've got everything that I need to go and speak to someone and get the help that I get. I want to ask, like, when I was in the township, because I know there's a lot of my friends that are there at a young age, because now you learn this stuff from a young age. They cry, the men don't cry. Yeah, but you have to be strong. You have to this. How do we get there? Like, how does this conversation get there? Because I can tell you now, my friends don't have access to this conversation right now. You know, we need to be spoken to at that age already. Because about it, my dad, I'm 30 years old now. I'm turning 31. I spoke to my dad for the first time, honestly, because there's too many people who are fatherless, fatherless, especially around my friends, and I know me and my dad weren't always close, but I've always told myself he's my father, because I'm a Christian. I can never throw away my parents, I'll honor my father and I'll love my father. And I thought, like, why wasn't my dad there when I was young? I have all this question. I've got many other friends who go through the same thing. But as black men, we don't talk to each other. We don't ask our dads the hard question. We don't have the hard conversation. 30 years old, I only had this conversation with my dad when I'm 30 years old. I asked him. He gave me so many answers, things I didn't know about me, about the struggles that he had as a father. Because I'm looking, going to an English school, I got a bursary. I'm looking at all the boys that their parents are dropping them off, taking them, watching their games, not understanding that my father's past or his upbringing wasn't like that. He didn't get the same opportunities. So he explained all of that stuff to me, told me stuff about my mother, but more respect for my dad. And the one thing that made me so happy was that he told me afterwards, I'm doing a story of my life, my documentary, and we're just having that conversation. Off camera, he came to me and says, that's the best conversation I've ever had in my life. So much stuff that I've always wanted to let you know happened here. So thank you so much, because he's never had a conversation like that with anybody else, and so many people, their dads probably have reasons why they're not there, not because they don't want their kids, because they're going to go look for opportunity somewhere else. But we lose our fathers because we can't have conversations, So how do we get it there? Because your parents can't give it to you because their dad never spoke to them like that. How do we get into kids in the communities that I come from, and my friends? How do they get access to that if they can't afford? Because our parents, all they think about, we don't have a meal today. Why would I think about my mental health if I don't have money to provide food today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Craig, if you'd like to maybe touch on this as well, because I absolutely like what Sia is saying, that we need to get there. So obviously, this is the start of this conversation. We then need to then gather all the forces that has brought us this conversation, Dav Men Plus K, as well as I Love You Men, to be able to go and speak to the guys as well in the township and in different areas that need this type of conversation. Craig?
Well, to be honest, Sia's point has touched the deepest passion of my heart, and that is fatherlessness, which is a massive, massive problem in South Africa. The correlation between fatherlessness and every social ill, as I mentioned earlier, is, the vast majority of inmates have no relationship with their father or a bad relationship with their father. So young boys take their cue from older men. So this issue of having a mentor, older mentor, is probably the most vital issue. That's why, when I started Father a Nation, my philosophy, my belief, and it still is today, heal men, heal the world. Heal men, heal the family, heal society, heal society, heal South Africa, heal the world, And it starts with whole men, pretty much around the world, and particularly in the brokenness of South Africa's past. The lack of strong, healthy, present, engaged, loving, caring, wise older men is enormous, and that leads to young boys growing up. Masculinity, I like to relate it to a car. A car is a very useful thing. We all use a car to get from A to B, but a car is also a very dangerous thing. If you don't know how to drive a car, you drive it too fast, you run a red robot, you drive it drunk, you're gonna, tens of thousands of people die every year because of a car. Masculinity is the same. And we as men need, just like you need to learn how to drive a car, you need someone who's driven a car to teach you how to drive a car. Masculinity is the same thing. Men need someone who's driven this thing called masculinity, with the testosterone, with the different drivers to women, with a greater degree of physical strength and the wildness. You need a man to teach you how to run that. Where's the red robot? What are the lines that we drive this in? And in the absence of that, men grow up wounded and broken with a false concept of what it means to be a man. So for me, and that's what Father Nation is all about, we need to restore the fathers and the mentors and the role models in South Africa. And you know what's encouraging, Molife, wherever I go, and I travel South Africa flat, and I go to townships, poor communities, rural communities, and wealthy communities, you find amazing men who want to be good men and often don't know how to be. And so if we can start a movement of teaching men how to be good men, of teaching the virtues of true masculinity, and getting men to be fathers. I read a beautiful thing the other day by a Harvard professor. He said, you know, because ideally you want your biological father to play that role, but it doesn't have to be your biological father. It doesn't. And he was saying that a stepfather or an uncle or an older brother or a grandfather or even an older man in the community who's engaged with you is actually a biological father. Why? Because relationship is biology. And you're an older man in relationship with a younger man, teaching him and mentoring him. He's a biological father. I love that, you know. So us as men need to step up, every one of us, and say we need to become fathers in South Africa, not just our own kids, but to a broader group. And if we can start that movement, man, and you see the power of sport, man. You know, Nelson Mandela was asked once, you know, what was the turning point in his life? What helped him? And he said boxing. I don't know if you ever did that interview, boxing, you know. I mean, see rugby. I mean, so many young guys, soccer. Mandela was boxing because boxing, you have a coach, you have a mentor, you have discipline, you have passion. You know, it does. If we can restore fatherhood and restore mentors, and every one of us as men, we can really begin to restore South Africa. Because as Sia said, it's unbelievably sadly lacking. You walk through Alexander now, midday, you see the streets lined with unemployed men who are desperate. And we need to bring hope, and we need to bring mentorship, you know, and a sense of purpose to the men of South Africa to transform our nation, because we have beautiful people in this nation, man. Beautiful men, beautiful women.
Absolutely. And we are giving away 5 hampers. Those hampers are worth 1.6 each. For the hampers from Dove Men Care. So just keep your comments coming in. I can see your comments. So a question I have here is, and I'll start with you, Mahlatse. Oh yes, Mahlatse, actually your hand is up, so you can go ahead, because I actually had a question for you.
Okay, cool. So I wanted to come back to circle a little bit to see as question about how then do we spread and extend these conversations to people who do not have access like we do right now, or the privilege to be online right now, to hear and understand the basis of what masculinity needs to be next. My belief, and I tend to practice this in little pockets of organizations that I am a part of, is to try and eradicate the sense of conversations being a ceremonious event. Because once you bring a couple of us all around together to hurdle within, no matter what the intention might be, good as it may be, if we bring it as part of our culture on the day-to-day, speak and have and create access to the young men in our lives, or the young male presenting bodies in our lives, just so that they know that in us, they've got that comfortable space. In us, they can see vulnerability. In us, they can see less toxicity. And by less toxicity, I'm not saying that avoiding it altogether. Approaching it head on, is it not one of the pillars of what we hold so dearly onto masculinity, that toxic masculinity is something that we have to try and work through head on? It is not something that is a far-fetched idea, that it is spoken of by the Molifes, the Mahlatses, the Craigs, and the Oscars and Sias of this world, that even Tepo, who is down the road from me, needs to know and understand. And it's up to me to create that space for that person. I do this in my personal capacity, and along with the artists I work with, that I find that there is such a sweet spot once people find that there is comfortability and they've got access to you without you trying to be very preachy about what it is you are moving forward.
You answered part of it, Mahlatse. So now maybe I'll move to you, Nkamo, because I really want everyone on the panel to answer this question. How do we normalize mental health conversations so that they become a part of our everyday social setting? What can we do? Nkamo?
I think, such a platform like this creates a space where people can talk, and I think, like the panel has said, that we need to not just have it here, but take it out there, There are a lot of platforms that are available. I think we need to create a space where men can speak about their emotions. Men can speak about what they go through, not only at parties, not only after they are drunk, but we need to create support groups, more support groups, in townships like Alexandra, Mamelodi, Soweto. We need to create awareness. I think for me, it just feels like we have so much work to do. It just feels like there's still more that we need to do, and we need to take this platform, to the world, and encourage men to speak up. I hear people talking about toxic masculinity, but I want to bring a concept here, which is positive masculinity, where we encourage men to talk about their feelings, where we encourage men to check in each other, or check with each other, and once we create that, I believe that will impact the world. And the concept of mental health, I think that for me, will bring some awareness of some sort.
Absolutely. And for me, when did positive masculinity become a thing in your life? I love that you said positive masculinity, Kamo. For me, for you, when did that happen for you?
When brothers would just start checking upon me, which is what then led to, like, we need to create a podcast where we're just having this conversation and you can access it and you can listen to this. And the more you listen to it, the better it gets, It was exactly that. It was just more and more brothers being able to check in. But also the funny thing, which I would like to hear from Oscar, is some didn't even know how to handle when I would tell them about my depression. It was too much for Machita, it would be like, hey bro, let's have something, hey, so like we can, even if men are checking on you, but the question then is, how are they checking on you? Because they could be checking on you. I had friends that I'll have 7 friends at my place, but like when they leave, I was still, because I still needed to pretend that I was okay, but when they leave, then I will still feel empty. So it's a question of, even if when we're checking on each other, how do we really check on each other,
Absolutely. I actually wanted to, that was my next point.
Oh, sorry, man.
Yeah, to speak about how do you check on someone, because I think for a lot of us, we know how to, we're talking about it, but the how, I think the how is the most important thing. We can start with you, Nkamo, then Greg, and then just everyone on the platform, because I feel like everyone here has a story about mental health and how we've been able to maneuver it.
Yeah, I think checking in with each other means, being honest, with one, yourself, and with others. So what I mean by this is, when you check in on someone, you're not just checking in just for the sake of, I'm checking in on you, but really wanting to know how they are doing, how they are. There's this social norm of greeting. When you greet each other, we say, how are you? I'm good, and you? But really, are you good? And we need to go in that, extent of asking, how have you been? When you say you're good, what is good? And I think that for me will sort of open up a space where people can talk about, their feelings. And obviously it goes back to trust. You cannot just tell a stranger that I'm going through this and this and this and this, and they say, okay, I think it goes back to who you trust, who you can open up to, Earlier on, I spoke about self-awareness. I think also when you are aware of how you feel and what triggered you or what caused you to be in that state, when someone asks you or check in with you, I think it will be easier for you to say, I'm feeling sad because of I lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm feeling anxious because there might be retrenchment at work. I'm anxious because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think it goes back to being honest with yourself and with others.
Yeah. And there's a question here that I see from Suzgo Nguira. She says, how do women support men on their mental health journey, whether they're partners, their brothers, etc.? Craig?
You know, we need each other. Men and women need each other. Brothers need each other. You know, the sisters need. And what's interesting about men is the thing that we want most from women is not what you think it is. It's respect. Men crave the respect of women. They crave. I mean, men want respect. We want respect from each other's brothers. We want respect from women in our lives. And I think when women realize, obviously, you don't give respect to men, it doesn't deserve it. You know, I mean, let's be clear on that. But you know, men love respect. They love to know that, you know, I've got what it takes to do this. You know, that's why I don't, you know, when a guy's doing a DIY project, you know, and his wife comes and says, hey, Craig, you know, shouldn't that go there? It freaks you out, man, because she's actually telling you don't know what you're doing, you know, and it gets you, you know, we want respect, you know. So if women can do a couple of things. Number one, never accept false masculinity. Just don't accept it. Draw a line in the sand and don't accept false masculinity. And false masculinity is anything that abuses, dominates, etc., etc. But number two, value your own femininity. But number three, value true masculinity. Honor true masculinity, you know. I mean, and value the man in your life. You know, make him feel good about himself. Make him feel powerful. Make him feel strong. Make him feel as though he's got what it takes, you know. Women who do that create very strong men, because men want to know that they've got what it takes to be the man in their family's lives that they want him to be. And any woman who affirms and acknowledges, obviously only when he deserves it, this goes a long, long way to raising a man's self-esteem and sense of ability. You know, and you know, you remember that Rocky movie, the one Rocky movie where Rocky was fighting that big Russian guy, and his wife didn't want him to fight, man. And it destroyed him. I mean, he was training badly. He got in the ring. He was getting beaten up. And then his wife came into the auditorium. And through his bloody eyes, he saw his wife in the audience. And finally, she said to him, go, Rocky, go. You've got, you know, and that transformed his whole life, you know. And suddenly he started winning the fight, you know. And I mean, if we've got that from the woman in our lives, you know, that you've got what it takes, man. Pumi, you've got it, man. I'm in your corner. You can do this thing, you know. I respect you. I admire, you know, it goes such a long way to helping us be the man that God made us to be.
Yes, Sia?
Yeah, I agree with Craig so much. I love, like, I share with my wife quite a lot, because I wasn't able to do that for a very long time, you know. And we started seeing someone together. We talked to a therapist together, because I'm not able to express how I feel sometimes, you know. I'm not able to tell her sometimes how much I love her or how this makes me feel. I'm numb sometimes to a lot of things. But over the years, I've learned, like, my heart is softening a little bit more. The more I speak about my experiences, the more I can talk to and communicate to her. And now I'm at a stage where I can tell her, like, I really work hard, because I'm as a black man, I'm scared to go back to where I came from, to where I used to. So I'm overworking. I'm always shooting and I'm always doing something. Actually, yesterday she sent me a message. She said, I appreciate how hard you work for us as a family, because she knows I'm thinking about the future of my children, you know, how that I don't want them to go through, like, what I the way I grew up. And she always encourages me when I tell her how I feel, or like how hard I am, or how emotionally fatigued that I am. And I tell her I'm weak. You know what? I feel weak right now. Just be with, you know, just listen to me. And she knows sometimes she doesn't have to say anything. I just speak my mind out, and I speak and I speak. And I remember the one time we were playing a rugby game. We were playing the Lions tour last year, and there was so much pressure. We lost the first game. The second game, you know, there was a lot happening, and there was so much pressure. If we lose this one, we're done. And I had an interview before the press conference, and lady asked me a question that I've been asked so many times. What would you tell a 9-year-old Sia? And because of all the pressure and everything, I just burst into tears. Just before I started crying, and I sat there, and the more I cried, the better I felt. And then I ran to the bathroom, and then I called my wife, and I said, babe, I don't know what's going on. I'm crying, and I'm supposed to be doing an interview, and I cried on camera. Obviously, they didn't put that on TV, but I wasn't ashamed of that. But I just didn't know what was happening to me because I never cried. And she told me, you can't stop crying because you're releasing. You found a way to release. She encouraged me, don't stop it, cry there, and you can stay on. I'll stay on the phone for as long as you want, and when you're ready, then you go back out there. You know how much better I felt after that conversation and after sharing those kind of tears. Now, I don't feel scared or afraid or I'm going to get judged by how I feel by my wife. She makes me feel comfortable. I can call it anytime about anything to go speak to her.
Absolutely. No, I actually really love that. For me, I have your hand is up, yeah.
Yeah, it's just beautiful what Sia said, and I mean I think it goes. I just wanted to say it's acceptance. You know, when we feel like we're getting accepted as men, it makes it so much better to open up. You know, you feel like you can be able to, even if it's your wife, it's your husband, or it's your friend, or whoever, you feel as soon as there's that acceptance, or in that community, that's when you feel like you can be able to open up, you know. And I mean, it just validates that what Sia is saying, that that's when you can cry, you know, that's when it's okay for you to cry and you don't feel ashamed about it, you know. And I mean, for me, it was also a similar thing. Like, once I could cry in front of my kids and they could see that and they were fine with it, you know, and we can even sometimes cry watching a movie together, you know, and it's okay to express these emotions of sadness. And I guess also what we need to do more and more is to encourage young boys. I think it's very important to encourage young boys that it's okay to cry, you know. Yeah. It's fine to feel that pain. And it would have been so beautiful had they shown Sia crying on screen, you know, so that a young boy can see that giant, that hero that Sia is, and is crying, you know, and that makes it okay for young boys, you know. That's just what I wanted to say.
I was hoping they did show it because I do speak about it and I don't feel embarrassed about it. I feel happy about it because I know what I'm happy about. I know when I'm struggling. I'm only scared when I don't know. When I know, then I go ask for help. If I don't know, then it's a problem, you know. And I'm not ashamed to talk about it because I feel so strong, you know. I feel so strong. And the only people that I need to impress me, I have to impress myself, be happy with myself and my family. Those are the most important people. If they accept me for who I am, I'm happy. I'm happy.
Absolutely. Craig, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think I love the way this conversation is going. You know, there's so much misunderstanding about masculinity, and we tend to live in an either-or world. You know, either you're a sensitive, caring, loving kind of man, or you're a macho, you know, caveman. And masculinity is both. You know, I mean, see, if you don't mind me using example, you know, when Sia's got the ball and he's running at his opposite number, he's a warrior. You know, I mean, there's no mercy in his eyes. He wants to flatten that guy and he wants to run through him, you know, and in every man's life, we need that. There are times when you got to work hard. You got to suck it up. Things are tough. Things are coming at you from all angles. There's COVID. There's all kinds of shit happening. And you got to put on the warrior face. You got to hold on to that thing and you got to plow through regardless. You're tough. That's not a time to cry. That's not a time to be soft and break down. But there's another side to men, and that's the side that Sia's just been talking about, where we are tender and we are soft and we are able, you know, as Phumi said, we're able to cry in front of our kids because that shows a real man. You know, it's a real man. If we just a ball carrying warrior, you know, I mean, how do our kids and our wives and people identify with us? And if we just the guy that cries, you know, they're not going to feel safe in our presence because when there's a burglar at the door, you're going to hide behind your wife. You know, they want the man who's going to be pick up the baseball bat, face the burglar, but then they also want the man who, as Mpumi said so beautifully, can break down in tears, you know, and this is both, you know, the warrior face and the lover face. And we need both of those in society, not either or.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that, because all of us have gone through a mental health journey, right? I'll ask this to you, Mahlatse. If you are someone on the outside and you see that your partner, your friend, or someone is struggling, you as someone who has gone through a mental health journey and consistently works on it, like all of us, how do you help that person? If you say to someone, you say, hi, how are you? They're like, no, I'm fine. But you can tell they're not fine. What do you do? How do you help them from your own personal experience and maybe what you've also seen?
Great question there, Molife. I cannot echo enough the importance of holding space. Holding space does not mean me exercising my machismo manner of operating, that whenever someone tells me that they're not doing well, or whether I see that they're not doing well, it really does not mean me coming up with solutions as to how they can do well. Give them space. Molife, are you well? No? All right. What would you need for me to do? Is there something I can help with? I need you to know that in me, there is a safe space. So I may not have the tools that Oscar would have from a professional point of view to guide you through how to get through what you are going through. The only thing that I can do and do very well is holding space for one. One more thing, have you noticed how, I'd like to imagine that all of us here as men, we know how much, by virtue of being masculine presenting people, how happy we make one another. Whenever we get together as men, we are so happy. The smile comes from the deepest part of us. And I've noticed that at a sight of something foreign, by way of whether it's a woman, if you're that way inclined, or whether it's whatever body that you tend to want to sexualize, that's when you puff up your chest hairs and you feel the need to either be better than, or you get swallowed by that feeling. But whenever we're together, it's Christmas Eve every other day. So how about we try and exploit that moment when we are together, see it as a safe moment, because that's what it is, a safe moment, and then check in on one another right there, whether we do it by way of being at a tavern, drinking all together, at the club, or wherever it is that we head all together, at a sports field like Sia probably would be. Whenever we're that happy, take that space. Do not take it for granted. Take that space, assert your masculinity there, and not by way of being better than anyone else.
Absolutely. And you know what I've learned though is and I've got a lot of young people, and also guys my age that I hang around with a lot. What I've learned is I'm able to create a safe space by just allowing people to be whatever they are in that moment. So if you're sad in that moment, if you're feeling vulnerable in that moment, just allow people to be. And one of the things that I've heard from some people are like, oh no, I never want to be like this, because after this, people see me like this. And then if they see me this vulnerable, that things are not going well, then that's why I hold back. So to you, Nkamo, how do we tell someone that it's okay to engage in how you feel without getting that trust? Because I think for me, the trust part is the most difficult part, because then someone is afraid that once I tell you that things are not going well, then next time we're out there and having a good time, you're just looking at me like, this guy.
Yeah, I think if we can remove judgment, if we can remove judgment and really have empathy, and understand each other. I like what Mahlatse said about, creating that space where somebody can talk, and I think if we can create that environment where they can be, where they can trust us without even judging, it's often we get into a space where when somebody tells you something, we go to, but I thought you're strong. How, when, you such. And I think that on its own has an impact. Imagine if I'm telling you about my problems and you tell me how, as a psychologist, you're going through this. Already, it's creating what? That boundary that, certain things I cannot share with you. I think once we remove that judgment and we really listen and have empathy, I believe that, that is a true form of checking in.
Absolutely. So yes, yeah.
What I always find, a lot of my friends don't want to talk about that kind of stuff, and it's always hard, but I love what Mahlatse said, that's the best place to, we actually need to use those space for those kind of conversation. But what I always find always works the most is me sharing first on whatever I went through that was tough, I speak about it first, you know, because that will just break the ice and just say, boys, it's been tough this past couple of months. I've been working and I haven't been there for my family. I haven't been able to achieve this and all of that. And I'm feeling the pressure. Like, how's it going on your guys' side? Let them know, you know, you open yourself up first, and it's always easier for other people. When someone does that to me, I instantly trust them, you know, to be able to talk. And I do, and I'm flat out tell someone, if you're judging someone, I'll tell you straight, you know, like, that's not what we're here for. In so many things that we've got such good friendships and we make each other so happy, but we're not honest with one another. We need to cut out those toxic things that we grew up with. Like, we're not talking about those things. This is not the time. When is it ever the time? You know, and I think open up, being honest with one another, and cut out negative people straight away and let them know this is what we're talking about now, especially before it starts getting too late after a few drinks, when you're just chilling, having conversation.
Absolutely. Nkamo, where can men get help? I know there is Lifeline, where you can get a couple of sessions, free counseling sessions, and also you can go. Where can you go get help if you're feeling off, or also if you're realizing that I might have a mental health illness?
Yeah, there are counselors and psychologists in most local clinics. So if you cannot afford a private psychologist, you can go to your local clinic or hospital, you know, where you can get, you know, someone to talk to. It can be a counselor, it can be a psychologist. So the government actually made it easier, you know, although the resources are not enough, but there are psychologists and counselors all over the country in local clinics. Also, there is the SEDEF, you know, South African Depression and Anxiety Group, which has a hotline. You know, if you, for instance, you want to talk to someone privately over the phone, you can call them. You know, so it's I think they've got a 24-hour line, you know. So those are some of the places where you can get help. Or if you can afford, you can then Google a psychologist in your area closer to you, you know, call them, make an appointment with them.
Yeah, and also there's, so sorry about that. There's Kwezi Mabunda who's saying there's an app called Join Panda that hosts regular support meetings, and they have psychologists available for one-on-one appointments as well. So I think the one thing I wanted to ask you guys is, how do we, one of the main reasons why a lot of us suffer from not wanting to talk about things, and then sometimes it's mental health issues, whether anxiety, depression, is the fact that there are a lot of expectations put on what a man is, what it means to be a man. So how do we maneuver that? Not only maneuvering it from people in their 30s, but maneuvering it from someone as young as 19, going all the way to your 20s, 30s, and then 40s. How do we maneuver that, Craig? What do we do with expectations? Because I just feel like expectations usually are where it all starts.
Yeah, Molife, it's a tragic question. You know, I just relate a story from my life. 4 years ago, a very close friend of mine committed suicide. And at his funeral, there was a group of us friends standing around. His name was Pete. His family doesn't mind me sharing the story. And we asked each other, did you know what Pete was going through? And we said, no, I didn't. You didn't. You know, none of us knew. And it was such an eye-opener for me to realize that we obviously, as a friendship group, had not created an environment where it's okay for him to share with us. And he, as a man, felt it wasn't okay. Now, the issue in his life was he'd lost, he was going through a divorce, but he'd lost a lot of money. And he felt the burden of expectation that he had to keep his family in a certain standard of living. That was the expectation on his life. And he honestly felt that if he couldn't do that, he was less of a man. And in fact, when we read all the stuff he left, he believed that the insurance payout on his death was more valuable than he himself being alive, you know? I mean, and this is a toxic expectation that a lot of men have on them, that unless you can provide, and unless you can, and it gets worse, you know, unless you can provide a certain standard, and if you had a certain standard and you lose your job and you've got to downgrade, you know, it means you're downgrading as a man. I'll never forget, my kids used to go to a school called St. Stithians, a very nice school, and then one day my car was in for service, and I borrowed this beaten up old Mazda 323, and I'm driving into campus and I see these Range Rovers, Mercedes Benzes, you know, and I mean, I literally turned off and I hid because I didn't want these guys to see me driving this. And, you know, it was such a moment for me to realize, Craig, what an idiot you're being. You know, you're judging your manhood, your worth on the basis of the car you drive. So does that mean if I lose my car, I lose my manhood? You know, it's just a stupid concept. So we have to change that narrative. You know, we have to judge men on the basis of their character, of what they overcome, of their integrity. Are they a man of their word? Are they loyal, faithful, committed? You know, and I mean, women have to adjust their expectations too. Let's be honest. A lot of women, you know, I've seen a lot of situations now where men have lost work and they don't even want to tell their wives because they're scared. Or when the wife's a primary breadwinner and she loses respect for the man. I mean, that's a wrong expectation and value of manhood in a woman and in a man. You know, a man can be a man in many other ways other than having to keep his family in a certain standard of living. So this is a very key point you raise, and it's something we have to address when we move away from toxic masculinity to true authentic masculinity. And that's permeated male and female alike, sadly.
Definitely. Nkamo is just having a problem with his router, but he'll be right back. So we're literally about to wrap up our webinar. So I'll start, yes, Mpumi, because I want to just have one last word from everyone. Mpumi?
Actually, just to add on, Craig, just a short one. I think it starts with acceptance, you know. I think when you're in a space where you feel people are accepting you, you know, it's very easy to say, hey, gents, I can't be able to afford to pay this beer, you know, and it's okay, you know, and the other brother is like, it's fine. You know, it starts with just acceptance, you know. So many, like, it's funny because I also lost a friend through committing suicide, and it tortured me for a long time. It was like, how could he not speak? But then I realized that I just, in the space where we were, there was no acceptance. You know, we thought we could talk openly, but he didn't feel accepted for who he is, that he has downgraded, things are not going well. You know, so I think acceptance starts there. And the more and more, I think, like a platform like this, the more and more men hear about our vulnerabilities here, it helps. It helps you to accept yourself and accept the other one that's going through some tough situation.
Absolutely. So I'll announce the winners, right? The winners of the hampers. We're also giving away 6 3-month digital subscriptions to GQ. I'll announce the winners of the hampers. What we'll do is, we've got your details. We'll be able to email you and tell you how you're going to get your hampers. So it's Vuyisile, Katleko, Brandon, Susko, and Njabulo. So those are our winners of those hampers from Doveman Care with 1.6 each. But we will email you the details because we have your details. But last word, let's start with you, Mahlatse. Last word on, yes, yeah, I see your hand is up.
Before we close, I just want to ask from Pumi on, I love you, man. I think I love what you're doing. And obviously, Craig, as a Christian man, like fatherlessness is one of the biggest things that I feel so strongly about. And I wish it for so many, for our nation and for our world, for our communities. That's how I believe so many homes are broken down, you know. And, you know, I've been raised by my grandmother and I love her to bits. But for some reason, you know, all I want is my father. Like, I don't know how it would feel if I had to lose my father, you know. And I encourage you to keep on doing that. I wish somewhere along the line we get to do something together. Hopefully Dove can actually take it further than this, because I believe this is nice and all, but we need to do a little bit further. So regarding I Love You Man, I think if we can, I would love to have a session with you, and we try and get in, for now we can't go physically, maybe in the community, but try and get it in as many radio stations, whatever podcast session we have. They have to help us to get it as many radio stations as possible. Have this conversation on social media. People need to hear this. Try and get it as much as we can, And I'll encourage more people to come, maybe talk about by Craig or by you from Bumi, and we need to talk about this. People need to know, people need to see the heroes. Say, you know what, I'm a human being, I feel what you feel, I hurt like you hurt, and it looks okay, and I'm happy with it. And one thing I would love to encourage people, no matter who you are, you need to find happiness within yourself. You as a person need to love yourself. Nobody should love you more than you love yourself. You need to know yourself more than anybody else, and you need to be honest with yourself at all times, because at the end of the day, you're the only person that can look after you. You know how you feel. You can't lie to yourself. I remember like whenever I was struggling, looking at the mirror, I didn't like the person I was, and I was struggling with addiction, with this and that. That's why I don't drink anymore. I realized that that doesn't help me or lead me to any good places. And I make peace with it. And I'm slowly starting to get better and realizing more things. So check on yourself, you as a person. We know who you are. No matter if the next person is not impressed with what you have, just as long as you're happy with it, that's enough. And keep on moving. And make fun of yourself first. Laugh at yourself first. It makes it easier when somebody else laughs at you. That's what I always. Yeah,
absolutely. I absolutely agree with you, Sia. Like, you definitely, no one needs to love you more than you love yourself, and self-awareness as well, like what Nkamo said earlier. So thank you so much for that, Sia. Mahlatse, your parting shot, your last words. We have a lot of people who joined us, and people are really looking forward to this webinar, and I really think we've just opened the floodgates to something very, very deep and necessary.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Well,
man, I gotta go first. Damn. I mean, in closing, I hope it is encouraging that I, for one, do not center my masculinity around the external perception of who I am or the external expectations of how my masculinity should be set up. I am dedicating myself right here on this very webinar that I will not at any point will I not be holding space for any masculine identifying body. Not at any point will I not be a go-to person for any masculine identifying body. If they need someone to hold space for them, I am to some degree accessible, and much like Sia expressed, Bumi, your work is exactly what we needed without thinking that we even needed it. Oscar, your expertise and the fact that you're giving time to us and all of us to share this unmatched. Craig, the gems you've shared this evening, you've been dropping mind-blowing gems that I'll take with me forever and ever. And Molife, you and the GQ team have extended such a beautiful opportunity to kickstart these conversations. I am very excited for the next level of this, for how we will all come together. I do believe it's a responsibility that's bestowed upon the six of us here. The sensible next step is for us to engage not only with each other, but have the likes of Njabulo in the comments, Kwezi, and so on and so forth, have this access to us. So yeah, the importance of mental health, especially with male identifying bodies, I cannot stress enough. It is so important, because following this, it is how we will move forward.
Thank you. Nkamo, your parting shot.
I think mental health is as important as physical health. When you are sick, you go to the doctor, right? And I think it's very important to remember that your mental health is as important as the physical health, and is your priority also. We need to start prioritizing mental health. We need to encourage young men to go for therapy. Therapy is not just when you are, not okay. Therapy can be for self-growth also. So we need to encourage people to go for therapy, come for therapy, and take care of your mental health.
Absolutely. Craig?
Well, I think as men, we don't honor each other enough. And if I could just quickly honor you guys, my fellow panelists, and let me start with you, Molife. Editor of GQ, you're not just about fashion. You're not just about the outside appearance. You're about the heart, the soul, and I honor you for that, man. I honor you for setting something up like this, which deal with the real issues. Mahlatse, I just really appreciate you, brother, your authenticity, your humility, your genuine care. I can see you're a man who cares and who loves and who feels deeply. You're accepting. You're non-judgmental, and I honor you for that, man. Thank you. And for me, I can say I love you, brother. I love what you do. I love the conversations you create and make, and the opportunities you make for people. Just keep it up, man. I really honor you for that. We live in a nation there are so many great men in this nation, many of them unheralded, unseen, and just keep those conversations going. Sia, what can I say, brother? You're an absolute inspiration to a nation. Inspiring to me. You've done the most phenomenal things, and you remain humble, you remain grounded, you remain authentic, you remain free to be who you are. And you're a great inspiration to me and many, many men around the nation. So just keep it up and don't feel too much pressure, man, because you're doing great just who you are. And that's what's amazing about you. You don't have to try too hard. It's like a flower doesn't have to try hard. The sun shines, it just grows. And I think you're doing that, and then kudos to you and honor to you, brother. Oscar, your chosen profession, man. You've chosen to heal, and you've chosen to make a difference in people's lives. So kudos to you, kudos to your brain and what you bring to the world. And I just want to honor you. And if we as men can be less lonely, more vulnerable, and more honoring of each other, man, as a band of brothers, we can heal this world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Pumi, over to you.
Wow, man, it's emotional, It's such an emotional thing, and Mahlatse more, Molife more, because from word go, when we started talking about this, you just were like, you kicked it, and you're like, let's move, and what an honor, man, to have these brothers here, and us just being open about what we've gone through, our pain, and how we can help each other. Even this, it's actually that platform of acceptance and healing each other. You know what I mean? Excluding the people that are watching or listening, just hearing Sia's story, Mahlatse, Craig, Oscar, and just the bits of us sharing what we've gone through, it's healing for me, already. I just feel like we're on a very beautiful path. We've had these conversations, Molife, that it just doesn't end here. We need to move it forward, and I promise you, as you said, we would definitely take it forward, that we take it to the townships, I'll reach out to Craig, and we need to take this somewhere else, we need to take it to other men. How I'm feeling now, I want a 7-year-old boy in Soweto to feel that it's okay. I live in this shack, but man, there's another bigger life out there. I want a man that is like feeling depressed to feel like, you know what? There's a possibility if guys can talk like this. So I really hope, with the collaborations of brands and whatever, that we can take this forward, because it's so touching and it's so beautiful, the openness of just us as men talking like this. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Sia, your parting shot?
No, I think I said everything that I wanted to say. And I'm really grateful to be part of this. And I'm grateful that, I always say, that we can use our struggle or our moments of challenge. There's always something to learn out of it. That's what I've learned, through my faith, that encourages me to know that when you're going uphill, or whenever there's tough season, there's always something good coming out of it. There's always a lesson through that. And don't waste your pain. Don't waste your struggle. You can always use it to help someone else or use it or learn something out of that period. So I'm grateful to have been here with all you guys. And Mahlatse, please invite me to that 31st party. I want to be part of that conversation too. And really, man, Dav and GQ, let's find a way to have more of this conversation. Let's find a way to get these conversations to as many people as we can in South Africa, especially those when, like, I'm thinking about me when I was young. How does that get to me somehow? We need to find a way, because we're all okay now. The people that are watching this are okay. They can go and afford to hire someone like Oscar. But how do we get to the people that can't afford it, or they won't hear it at home? They will see all these trauma situations at their house. How do we get them to learn it? Maybe at school or at their sporting event. So we need to get it there. Let's spread the message. And also, let's not be too cool on social media. Let's be honest. You don't have to if you're not comfortable sharing with yourself. Be human. Let other people know that you are human just like them.
Wow. No, absolutely love that. And I think for me, part of the intention of this webinar as well is to just help people realize that they're not alone. So I loved what Craig said, that so we feel less lonely. So for us being able to come together and have this conversation, thank you to Dav, man, plus K, as well as I Love You, man, and every one of you guys on the panel, just to agree to have this conversation. Absolutely thankful for that. And I think for everyone who is here listening to us and watching, and I mean, obviously we're going to make this webinar available because we're recording it. We're going to make it available so that people can still see the webinar even after it's finished, and then we'll probably turn it into a podcast. Understanding that you're not alone, I think, is the most important thing. I think as men, that's the most important thing, understanding that we're not alone and we're able to work together as a group and be able to be open and engage in how I feel, and also be able to get help. I think get counseling for the trauma, speak to other men. You're not alone. Guys, thank you so much for your time. This was cool. We've gone on to 7:30. We're meant to speak for about 45 minutes, but listen, this was worth all of it.
My hand is up, but we continue.
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to ask if it's possible that we can have this quarterly, because I feel this is something that should be done regularly and not just when we have a tragedy in the community or when we lose one of our own. You know, I was just wondering if there's a possibility that we can organize something like this, you know, quarterly if possible.
I think that's possible. I think the next one would even be nice if it was to happen even in person as well, in different spaces. So definitely, this is something that I think we can arrange and make happen. Definitely. But yeah, guys, thank you, and to everyone who joined. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time. Bye, guys.
Bye.